Captain Eleanor Brown stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the massive Kthvar battlecruiser Crimson Talon approach through the viewport. At 3 kilometers long, the alien vessel dwarfed her ship by a factor of 10. Its hull bristled with energy cannons, particle beam arrays, and kinetic projectile systems that could vaporize entire city blocks. "They're hailing us, Captain," reported Communications Officer Smith, his voice tight with barely concealed fear. On screen! The holographic display shimmered to life, revealing the imposing figure of War Commander Kthvar. The Kthvar's 6 eyes glowed with predatory satisfaction, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the bridge lights of his flagship. Behind him, Elena could see dozens of his warriors, each one standing over 8 feet tall, their natural armor plates scarred from countless battles. "Human vessel!" Kthvar's voice rumbled through the universal translator, carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You have violated our territorial space. Surrender immediately, and we may allow your crew to serve as laborers in our mining colonies." Elena stepped forward, her uniform crisp despite 3 weeks of deep space patrol. At 5'6", she looked almost comically small compared to the alien commander, but her dark eyes held unwavering determination. "War Commander Kthvar," she replied evenly. "You are the one in violation. This system belongs to the Terran Federation under the Proxima Accords of 2387. Withdraw your fleet immediately." Kthvar's mandibles clicked in what Elena recognized as laughter. "Your pathetic little destroyer against my battle fleet. We have scanned your vessel, human. Primitive chemical propulsion, basic energy shields, and what appears to be—" He paused, consulting a datapad. Kinetic projectile weapons? How charmingly primitive." Behind the War Commander, Elena could see the tactical display showing the full extent of the Kthvar invasion force. 12 battle cruisers, 30 heavy cruisers, and over 100 smaller vessels. The most advanced alien technology in known space, powered by zero-point energy cores and armed with weapons that could crack planets. "Captain," whispered Tactical Officer Rivera, "we're receiving targeting locks from the entire fleet. They're not bluffing." Eleanor raised her hand slightly, signaling for patience. "War Commander, I'll ask once more. Withdraw your forces." Kthvar's 6 eyes narrowed. "Or what, little human? You'll launch your pitiful chemical rockets at us? Your species has been expanding too quickly, claiming systems that belong to superior races. Today, we teach you your place in the galactic hierarchy." "Understood," Elena said quietly. "Smith, close the channel." The hologram flickered out, leaving the bridge in tense silence. The crew of 43 men and women turned to their captain, waiting for orders that might be their last. "Captain," Rivera said, studying her tactical display, "I'm reading massive energy buildups across their fleet. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be big." Eleanor walked slowly to her command chair, her fingers trailing across the worn leather. The Retribution was old by human standards, nearly 15 years since her commissioning. Her hull bore the scars of a dozen minor skirmishes with pirates and raiders. Nothing like this. "Ma'am," called out Chief Engineer Patel from his station. "All systems are green. Fusion reactors at optimal efficiency, magnetic field generators online, and the main batteries are loaded and ready." "Thank you, Chief." Eleanor settled into her chair and activated the ship-wide communication. "All hands, this is the captain. In 60 seconds, we're going to show the Kthvar why they should have done their homework before picking a fight with humanity. Battle stations." Alarms began to sound throughout the ship as blast doors sealed and emergency systems activated. On the tactical display, the alien fleet began to move into attack formation, their massive vessels maneuvering with surprising grace despite their size. "Captain," Rivera reported, "the lead battlecruiser is charging its primary weapon. Energy signature is off the charts. That thing could vaporize us in a single shot." Eleanor's smile was cold as space itself. "Let them fire first. I want the galaxy to know who the aggressors were." The Crimson Talon's main cannon erupted in a brilliant lance of energy, a focused beam of pure destruction that could have melted through a moon. It struck the Retribution's shields dead center, causing the entire ship to shudder. "Shields at 97%, reported Lieutenant Morrison from the engineering station. "Minor fluctuations in the power grid, but all systems nominal." Elena heard several sharp intakes of breath from her crew. The Kthvar's most powerful weapon had barely scratched their paint. "Return fire," she ordered. "All batteries, full salvo." What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations to come. The Retribution's gun batteries swiveled toward the enemy fleet with mechanical precision. 8 massive turrets, each housing a 16-inch railgun, aligned their targets. But these weren't the primitive chemical explosives the Kthvar expected. "Firing," reported Rivera. The magnetic field generators that lined the ship's hull suddenly drew tremendous power from the fusion reactors. For a split second, the Retribution became the most powerful electromagnet in the solar system. The railguns fired in perfect synchronization, accelerating their projectiles to 15% the speed of light. But these weren't ordinary kinetic rounds. Each projectile was a masterpiece of human engineering, a depleted uranium penetrator core wrapped in a shell of compressed exotic matter, the same material used in faster-than-light drives. Upon impact, the exotic matter would undergo catastrophic decompression, releasing energy equivalent to a small star going supernova. The 8 rounds crossed the space between the ships in 0.003 seconds. The Crimson Talon had no time to react, no time to maneuver, no time to even register the incoming projectiles. The first round punched through the battlecruiser's shields as if they didn't exist, penetrated 16 meters of alien armor plating, and detonated inside the ship's primary reactor core. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away. The remaining 7 rounds found their targets among the Kthvar fleet. 3 more battlecruisers simply ceased to exist, their molecular structure scattered across several cubic kilometers of space. The shockwaves from the explosions disabled another dozen vessels, their sophisticated electronics fried by electromagnetic pulses that registered on sensors throughout the sector. In less than 4 seconds, Elena had reduced the most powerful invasion fleet in Kthvar history to scrap metal and expanding plasma clouds. The bridge of the Retribution was silent except for the steady hum of the life support systems. On the tactical display, the surviving alien vessels were frantically trying to retreat, their faster-than-light drives struggling to engage while their systems rebooted from the electromagnetic interference. "Ma'am," Rivera whispered, "the surviving ships are broadcasting on all frequencies. It sounds like surrender requests?" Elena stood and straightened her uniform. "Open a channel to the fleet commander." The holographic display activated, showing a different Kthvar officer, this one noticeably smaller and bearing the insignia of a lesser rank. His 6 eyes were wide with what Elena could only interpret as terror. "Human commander," the alien said, his translator struggling with what sounded like panicked chittering. We yield. We surrender. Please, no more destruction." "I am Captain Elena Brown of the United Earthship Retribution," she replied formally. "You have 30 minutes to evacuate this system. Any vessel remaining after that time will be considered hostile." Yes, immediately. But please, how? How did you—" "Our intelligence said human warships were weak, primitive." Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. "You made a fundamental error in your assessment, Commander. You assumed that because our ships look small, they must be weak. You forgot to ask the most important question." "What? What question? Why do we call them destroyers?" The transmission cut to static as the Kthvar vessels engaged their FTL drives in panicked retreat, leaving behind only debris and the lingering radiation signatures of exotic matter detonations. Chief Engineer Patel approached Elena's chair, his face pale but determined. "Captain, we have a problem." Elena turned to him, noting the concerned expressions spreading across her bridge crew. "What is it, Chief?" "Those weren't standard exotic matter rounds, ma'am. Command authorized us to carry 8 experimental projectiles for field testing. The energy release was significantly higher than projected." How much higher? Patel consulted his tablet, his hands slightly trembling. Each round released approximately 50 times more energy than calculated. The exotic matter compression ratio was apparently unstable. Instead of small supernova-equivalent explosions, Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine. Chief? Ma'am, according to these readings, we just detonated 8 pocket-sized black holes. They should have evaporated immediately, but the gravitational distortions are still showing on long-range sensors. And they're growing. Elena stared at the tactical display, watching as space itself began to warp around the detonation sites. The debris from the Kthvar fleet was being drawn inward, accelerating toward points of impossible density. Time to critical mass, she asked quietly. Unknown, Captain. This is completely outside our theoretical models. But if those pocket black holes don't evaporate naturally, Patel swallowed hard, they could consume this entire system within hours. Elena looked out at the growing gravitational anomalies spreading across the battlefield, each one a testament to humanity's terrifying capacity for unintended consequences. They had wanted to send a message to the galaxy about human military capability. Instead, they might have just doomed an entire star system. All stop, she ordered. Emergency transmission to Starfleet Command, Priority Alpha. As the Retribution hung motionless in space, surrounded by the growing darkness of artificial black holes, Elena realized that the galaxy's perception of humanity was about to change in ways she had never imagined. The real question was, would there be anyone left alive to spread the word? 18 hours after the battle, the emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within minutes of the first gravitational wave detectors registering the anomalies in the Kepler 442 system. Representatives from 47 species materialized as holograms around the circular chamber on Nexus Prime, their various forms of agitation creating a cacophony of clicks, growls, and electronic pulses. High Councillor Zethkri of the Vorthan hegemony called for order with a sharp crack of her ceremonial staff. The readings are confirmed. 8 gravitational singularities are actively growing in Terran space. Current mass accumulation suggests system-wide collapse within 72 hours. The holographic representative of the Kthvar Confederacy, War Marshal Kthvar, hastily promoted after the destruction of their invasion fleet, shifted nervously. Honorable Council, we must stress that the humans fired first. Our intelligence clearly indicated their vessels were— Your intelligence, interrupted Councillor Mirtak of the crystalline Silthari, her voice harmonizing in frequencies that made several representatives wince, failed to account for the humans' propensity for weaponizing theoretical physics, as did all of ours. Admiral Smith's hologram flickered to life at the human delegation's position. At 63, she was the oldest serving officer in the Terran fleet, her silver hair pulled back in a regulation bun that couldn't quite hide the exhaustion in her eyes. She had been awakened from sleep cycle aboard the UES Endeavour with news that one of her captains had potentially triggered the end of a star system. Honourable Council, Admiral Smith began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. We accept full responsibility for the current crisis. Captain Brown acted within established rules of engagement when faced with an unprovoked invasion force. However, the weapons she deployed were experimental, and their effects have exceeded all projections. Exceeded? Zethkri's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. Admiral, your captain has created artificial black holes. The gravitational distortions are already affecting shipping lanes 3 systems away. If they reach critical mass, I'm aware of the implications. Smith's jaw tightened. We have 17 ships en route to assist with evacuation efforts, but our priority must be containment. War Marshal Kthvar's mandibles clicked aggressively. Containment? You speak as if this were a minor containment breach rather than the potential annihilation of an entire system. The Kthvar Confederacy demands— The Kthvar Confederacy, Smith interrupted coldly, demands nothing. You initiated hostilities against a peaceful scientific survey vessel. You threatened genocide against civilian populations. Your own tactical records, which we've now accessed from your destroyed flagship, show you planned to use this system as a staging ground for a full-scale invasion of human space." The chamber fell silent. Several representatives exchanged uneasy glances. The implications of humans casually accessing heavily encrypted Kthvar military data from a destroyed vessel were not lost on anyone. High Counselor Zethkri raised her staff again. "Regardless of blame, we must address the immediate crisis. What does your science division recommend, Admiral Smith?" Smith activated a holographic display showing the Kepler 442 system. 8 pulsing red dots marked the locations of the growing singularities, with expanding circles indicating their projected gravitational influence over time. "Our theoretical physicists aboard the Endeavour have been running continuous simulations. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, our lead exotic matter specialist, believes the black holes are stabilized by residual exotic matter from the projectile casings. In theory, if we can introduce a counteracting exotic matter field." "In theory," rumbled the methane-breathing representative of the Horthak Empire, his translator adding ominous electronic undertones to his words, "many things are possible. In practice, you are discussing manipulating forces that dwarf stellar engineering." Smith nodded grimly. "Which is why we've authorized the deployment of the UES Prometheus." The effect on the Council was immediate. Representatives began speaking, or chittering, or harmonizing all at once. The Prometheus was humanity's most closely guarded secret, a ship that officially didn't exist, but which every intelligence service in the galaxy suspected was humanity's answer to the ancient Forerunner artifacts that other species relied on for their most advanced technology. "You would risk your prototype vessel?" Zethkri asked, genuine surprise coloring her tone. "We would risk everything to undo what we've done," Smith replied. "Captain Brown and the Retribution are still in system, collecting data and coordinating evacuation efforts. But if our calculations are correct, we have perhaps 40 hours before the singularities begin merging. After that," she didn't need to finish. "A merged black hole system would create a gravitational cascade that would strip the outer planets of their atmospheres within days and eventually drag the system's star into a death spiral." Aboard the UES Retribution, Kepler 442 System Captain Eleanor Brown had not slept in 36 hours. Her bridge crew worked in shifts, but she remained at her post, watching the tactical display that now showed the slow-motion apocalypse unfolding around them. The 8 pocket black holes had grown from pinpoints to spheres with event horizons, measurable in kilometers, each one surrounded by blazing accretion disks of superheated debris. "Captain," called out Dr. James Reeves, the physicist they'd taken aboard from the science vessel Galileo before it evacuated the system. "I'm reading some interesting data from the singularities. The exotic matter signatures are more complex than we initially thought." Eleanor turned from the display, noting the excitement barely contained in the young scientist's voice. "Explain." "The black holes aren't just consuming matter, they're creating it. The exotic matter decay is generating subspace fluctuations that appear to be synthesizing heavy elements. Look at these readings." The main screen shifted to show spectroscopic analysis of the material spiraling into the nearest black hole. Elena's eyes widened as she recognized elements that didn't appear on any periodic table. "Is that trans-uranic elements with impossible atomic structures? Some of these materials have theoretical properties that could revolutionize faster-than-light travel, energy generation, even matter transmission." Reeves paused, his expression torn between wonder and horror. "Captain, we've accidentally created the most advanced materials laboratory in known space. The applications are irrelevant if we all die in the next 2 days," Elena finished. "What about containment?" Before Reeves could answer, Communications Officer Smith looked up from his station. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Smith aboard the Endeavour. She's requesting immediate tactical analysis of the singularities." On screen, Admiral Smith's image appeared, her expression grave. "Elena, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The Prometheus is 2 hours out from your position. Dr. Tanaka believes she can use the ship's exotic matter containment system to collapse the black holes, but she needs precise gravitational field measurements from each singularity. Elena straightened in her chair. Admiral, the Prometheus is too valuable to risk on a theoretical solution. If Dr. Tanaka is wrong, we lose one experimental ship instead of an entire star system. Smith's tone brooked no argument. Your mission is to guide the Prometheus to optimal positions for field deployment. Whatever happens, Elena, the galaxy is watching. This incident has already changed how every species views humanity. We need to make sure it's a change we can live with. The transmission ended, leaving Elena staring at the tactical display. The approaching Prometheus appeared as a single green dot, seemingly insignificant against the cosmic forces they'd unleashed. "Captain," Rivera called from her tactical station, "I'm reading massive subspace distortions. Something's coming out of FTL. Multiple contacts bearing 127 Mark 8. Eleanor's blood ran cold as 12 new contacts appeared on her screen. Kthvar vessel signatures, but different from the invasion fleet they'd destroyed. These ships were larger, older, and according to the scanner readings, armed with weapons that made the previous fleet look primitive. "Ma'am," Smith reported, his voice tight, "we're being hailed. It's the Kthvar Dreadnought Worldbreaker. That's their flagship, the personal command ship of Supreme War Commander Vashitar." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. The most feared military leader in Kthvar space had just arrived in a system where humanity was attempting to defuse 8 artificial black holes with their most classified technology. "Open the channel," she ordered. The holographic display showed a Kthvar unlike any Elena had seen before. Supreme War Commander Vashitar was ancient by his species' standards, his exoskeleton scarred by centuries of warfare, his 6 eyes bearing the cold intelligence of a being who had conquered 17 star systems. Behind him stood warriors wearing armor Elena didn't recognize, technology that seemed to bend light around itself. "Human Captain Brown." Vashitar's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I come not as an enemy, but as a soldier who recognizes when a battle has escalated beyond conventional warfare." Elena felt her crew's tension spike. "Supreme War Commander, this system is under quarantine. For your own safety. Do not mistake my presence here for ignorance, human. My sensors show the same readings yours do. You have unleashed forces that threaten not merely this system, but the stability of spacetime itself in this entire sector." Vashitar leaned forward, his scarred features highlighted by the bridge lighting. "Tell me, Captain, do you know what the ancient forerunners called weapons that could unravel reality?" Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "No, sir." "World killers. And they learned, as you are learning, that some victories come at prices too terrible to pay." The Supreme War Commander straightened, and Elena caught sight of other figures moving behind him. Not Kthvar, but beings she didn't recognize. Tall, ethereal forms that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. "Captain Brown, I offer the combined knowledge of the Kthvar Confederacy and our ancient allies to help contain this crisis. In exchange, I ask only that when this is over, you answer one question." "What question?" Vashtar's 6 eyes fixed on her with predatory intensity. "What other weapons does humanity possess that you haven't told the galaxy about?" Elena stared at the Supreme War Commander, acutely aware that her answer might determine not just the fate of this system, but the future relationship between humanity and every other species in known space. In the background, alarms began to sound as the Prometheus dropped out of FTL, its experimental systems already interfacing with the exotic matter fields surrounding the growing black holes. The real test was about to begin. 6 hours until predicted singularity merger. The bridge of the UES Prometheus was unlike anything in the Terran fleet. Where other ships relied on conventional displays and interfaces, the Prometheus existed in a state of controlled reality distortion. Holographic controls floated in three-dimensional space around Dr. Yuki Tanaka as she manipulated exotic matter fields with movements that resembled conducting an invisible orchestra. Gravitational resonance at 94.7% and climbing, she reported to Captain Marcus Webb, a man whose security clearance was so high that officially he didn't exist. The black holes are responding to our containment field, but the exotic matter decay is accelerating the process. Webb nodded grimly, his eyes fixed on the tactical display showing 8 pulsing masses of distorted space-time. Each black hole had grown to roughly the size of Earth's moon, their event horizons crackling with hawking radiation and the screams of dying matter. Time to merger? 4 hours, 17 minutes. After that, Tanaka's hands paused in their complex dance. Captain, I need to be honest. Our models assume we can collapse the singularities before they merge, but if we're wrong, the Prometheus will be consumed along with everything else in this system. Webb's expression didn't change. He had commanded humanity's most classified vessel for 3 years, overseeing technologies that borrowed from principles discovered in ancient Forerunner ruins scattered across human space. The ship's exotic matter drive didn't just bend space-time for faster-than-light travel, it temporarily existed in a state of controlled dimensional instability that allowed it to phase through normal matter. Understood, Doctor. Continue the procedure. On the main screen, the combined fleet of human and Kthvar vessels maintained a safe distance from the growing catastrophe. The Retribution held position closest to the action, Captain Brown having volunteered her ship to serve as communications relay and emergency backup. Aboard the UES Retribution, Elena watched the Prometheus phase in and out of normal spacetime as it approached the nearest black hole, its hull shimmering like a mirage. The ship's exotic matter containment systems were already interfacing with the gravitational fields, trying to establish the resonance patterns that would theoretically collapse the artificial singularities. Captain, Communications Officer Smith called out, Supreme War Commander Vashatar is requesting a private channel. Elena nodded, and the main screen shifted to show the ancient Kthvar leader. Behind him, she could now clearly see the mysterious figures that had accompanied him, tall, ethereal beings whose forms seemed to exist partially outside normal three-dimensional space. Captain Brown, Vashatar began, I believe introductions are overdue. Allow me to present Curator HFY of the Watchers. One of the ethereal figures stepped forward, and Elena felt her consciousness expand as it spoke directly into her mind. Greetings, young species. We are the remnants of those you call the Forerunners. We have watched your development with great interest. Elena struggled to maintain her composure. First contact with the legendary Forerunners, beings who had achieved technological transcendence millions of years ago, and it was happening during humanity's greatest crisis. You're the builders of the ancient ruins, she managed. We are what remains after learning the price of unchecked advancement. Your species walks a path we once traveled, creating weapons that manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. We have come to offer guidance. Supreme War Commander Vashatar's 6 eyes fixed on Elena. The Watchers have shared their historical records with us, Captain. Your species is not the first to accidentally create gravitational weapons. Entire star clusters have been lost to similar experiments. Elena felt the weight of galactic history settling on her shoulders. What happened to the others? They made the same choice your species faces now, Curator HFY replied. Some chose to abandon such dangerous research, accepting technological limitations in exchange for survival. Others pushed forward, believing they could master forces beyond their understanding. And those who chose abandonment survived but stagnated, never achieving their full potential. Those who pushed forward either transcended physical existence, as we did, or were consumed by their own creations. Elena stared at the tactical display, watching the Prometheus work to contain the growing disaster. What would you recommend? Vashitar leaned forward. That is not the question you should be asking, human. The question is, what will your species choose to become? Before Elena could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Dr. Reeves looked up from his station, his face pale with shock. Captain, the black holes, they're not just merging, they're communicating. The Prometheus, in dimensional phase space. Dr. Tanaka felt the exotic matter fields respond to her commands, the ship's advanced sensors reading gravitational fluctuations across 17 dimensions simultaneously. The containment procedure was working. She could feel the artificial singularities beginning to destabilize as their exotic matter cores were neutralized. But something else was happening, something the theoretical models hadn't predicted. "Captain Webb," she called out, her voice tight with wonder and fear, "the black holes are generating structured gravitational waves. It's not random. There's a pattern, a mathematical sequence." Webb moved to her station, studying the complex waveforms appearing on the displays. "Could it be a natural phenomenon?" "No, sir. This is artificial. The gravitational pulses are forming prime number sequences, then mathematical constants, then—" Tanaka's voice trailed off as she recognized the patterns. "Captain, they're trying to communicate." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of exotic matter generators. On the main display, the 8 black holes pulsed in synchronized patterns, their gravitational fields creating ripples in space-time that carried information across the system. They're not just weapons, Webb realized. They're something else entirely. Galactic Council Chambers, Nexus Prime. Admiral Smith watched the real-time data feeds from the Kepler 442 system with growing amazement. The mathematical patterns being generated by the artificial black holes were beyond anything in the galactic databases, displaying levels of complexity that suggested intelligence far beyond current understanding. "Honorable Council," she announced, "we may be witnessing first contact with a form of consciousness that exists within gravitational fields themselves." High Councillor Zethkri's 4 eyes widened. "You're suggesting the black holes are alive?" "I'm suggesting that our experimental weapons didn't just create gravitational anomalies, they may have created a bridge to forms of existence that transcend physical matter entirely." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices as representatives from 47 species tried to process the implications. Humanity hadn't just demonstrated terrifying military capability, they had accidentally opened a door to levels of consciousness that challenged every assumption about the nature of existence itself. Final resolution. Aboard the UES Prometheus. Dr. Tanaka felt the moment when everything changed. The exotic matter containment fields suddenly resonated in perfect harmony with the black hole's gravitational songs, and she understood that the artificial singularities weren't fighting the containment, they were helping it. "Captain," she whispered, "they want to be contained. They're trying to teach us how." The mathematical patterns flowing from the black holes became increasingly complex, sharing equations that described the manipulation of space-time itself. Information that would advance human physics by centuries was being freely offered by consciousnesses that existed within the event horizons of artificial gravity wells. "Begin recording everything," Webb ordered. "This isn't just first contact, it's a technological transfer from beings that exist in states we can barely comprehend." Over the next 3 hours, the 8 black holes gradually collapsed under their own exotic matter decay, guided by gravitational equations provided by the consciousnesses within. As each singularity winked out of existence, it left behind a residue of impossible materials and recorded gravitational wave patterns that contained libraries of advanced physics. Epilogue. 3 months later. Captain Elena Brown stood in the observation deck of the new research station orbiting Kepler 442's 4th planet, watching teams of scientists from 17 different species working together to analyze the materials and information left behind by the gravitational consciousnesses. The crisis had ended, but its implications were still unfolding. Humanity's accidental creation of intelligent black holes had fundamentally changed galactic politics. No longer seen as a primitive species with dangerous weapons, humans were now recognized as inadvertent pioneers of consciousness research and gravitational engineering. The Kthvar Confederacy had formally requested a scientific exchange program. The Forerunner Watchers had offered to share certain technologies to help humanity avoid the mistakes that had led to their own transcendence. Most importantly, the incident had proven that the universe contained forms of consciousness and intelligence far beyond what any species had imagined. Admiral Smith approached, carrying a sealed datapad marked with the highest security classifications. "The final analysis is complete," she said quietly. "The gravitational consciousnesses left us blueprints for technologies that will revolutionize everything: energy generation, space travel, even the possibility of creating stable pocket dimensions." Elena nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. "And the weapons applications?" "Extensive. We now possess the theoretical knowledge to create gravity wells, manipulate time fields, and potentially fold space-time itself into defensive barriers." Smith paused. "The question is what we do with this knowledge." Eleanor looked out at the research teams, humans and aliens working side by side to understand phenomena that transcended traditional physics. "We learn, we grow, and we make sure that the next time humanity makes first contact with universe-spanning intelligences, it's on purpose rather than by accident." Smith smiled. "The Galactic Council is drafting new protocols for consciousness research and exotic matter experimentation. They're calling them the Brown Accords." Elena turned from the viewport, surprised. "After me?" "After the captain who proved that sometimes the most important discoveries come from the most dangerous mistakes." Smith's expression grew serious. "But Elena, there's one more thing. The Watchers shared something else with us. A warning." "What kind of warning?" "The gravitational consciousnesses weren't native to our universe. They were refugees, fleeing from something in a higher dimensional space, something that the Watchers describe as the hunger between realities." Eleanor felt a familiar chill, the same sensation she'd experienced when first seeing the growing black holes on her tactical display. "Are you saying there's something out there that feeds on consciousness itself?" "I'm saying that our experiment didn't just create artificial intelligence, it may have sent out a signal to intelligences that exist beyond our dimensional boundaries. The Watchers aren't sure, but they think our gravitational disturbance might have been noticed." Eleanor stared out at the peaceful research station, watching scientists from across the galaxy working together to unlock the secrets of consciousness and reality itself. Humanity had proven it could create weapons that challenged the laws of physics. They had made contact with intelligence that existed within black holes. They had earned respect and fear from species across the galaxy. But somewhere in the space between dimensions, something ancient and hungry might have taken notice of the young species that had learned to weaponize the fundamental forces of existence. The universe had become a much larger and more dangerous place, and humanity, for better or worse, had announced its presence to intelligences that dwarf even the transcended Forerunners. As Elena watched the stars wheel overhead, she couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. They had shown the galaxy why their ships were called destroyers. Now they would have to prove they could be something more.